Hello, my name is Kate Gukeisen. Welcome to my problem-based learning presentation. First, let's define problem-based learning. Problem-based learning really is just what its name implies, allowing students to learn through solving real-world problems. It is an approach to learning that is not only student-centered, but student-led. Today, I will present the concept of problem-based learning and some resources, techniques, and tools that will aid you in planning, implementing, and assessing problem-based learning scenarios. It may also help to define problem-based learning in relation to its close cousins, project-based learning and inquiry learning. Project-based learning focuses on developing a product or creation. The project may or may not be student-centered, problem-based, or inquiry-based. Inquiry-based learning is a student-centered, active learning approach that focuses on questioning, critical thinking, and problem-solving. Problem-based learning is an approach that focuses on the process of solving a problem and acquiring knowledge. The final product of a problem-based learning experience may be a project, but it doesn't have to be. The problem-based learning approach is also inquiry-based when students are active in defining the problem and the conditions under which they will solve it. Let's start our investigation of problem-based learning by exploring its components. The most important component of any learning is the learner. In a problem-based learning scenario, students do not just act as problem solvers. They are problem solvers. They are presented with a problem that they define, they establish the context for solving, they break into component parts, if they choose to, and they pursue their own research and reflection to produce solutions. As you can imagine, the problem presented to students is also an important component of problem-based learning. Students need to be presented with a special kind of problem that is meaningful to them in the real world and does not have an easy answer. This is known as an ill-structured problem. Seeking an answer to the problem should require students to reach across the curriculum and to think critically. In fact, the way in which students choose to approach, research, and solve the problem will serve as their curricular organizer. In a few slides, we'll brainstorm a few of these ill-structured problems for better understanding. But for now, let's continue to the next component of problem-based learning. As teacher librarians, we sometimes get nervous about student-led learning because we aren't sure how it should look in our curriculum planning. Problem-based learning is the experience of problem solving, and not coming up with a correct solution for a controlled or manufactured problem. For this reason, when you plan a problem-based learning experience, focus on the curriculum as the process that the students engage in, the process of building on previous knowledge, conducting research, and engaging in constructive criticism, and to collaborating to build new knowledge that crosses content areas. I've placed the teacher librarian as the last component of problem-based learning on purpose. Please think of this librarian action figure as raising a coach's whistle to her lips instead of a shushing finger. In problem-based learning, the teacher librarian is a coach, a mentor, a facilitator, and a model, not a traditional instructor. As a cognitive coach, you will model enthusiasm, effective learning, research and feedback strategies, and an interest in open inquiry. Coaching and modeling will be more involved and active with younger students or students who are new to the problem-solving process. And you can incorporate mini lessons that enhance your students' research depending on their previous experience and knowledge. Your goal in problem-based learning is to present an ill-structured problem for students and provide them with the modeling and support they need to let them lead the show. Now that we've covered the components of problem-based learning, that original definition should make more sense. Problem-based learning is a student-centered pedagogy in which students learn about a subject through the experience of solving real-world problems. Let's talk about the process through which that happens. We've covered some of the process of problem-based learning in talking about its components, but let's walk through the process together now. The process starts when the cognitive coach presents students with an ill-structured, real-world problem. The students will then choose a group moderator or a scribe to help them keep track of their process. The students define the problem, break it into component parts, brainstorm ideas based on prior knowledge, and then collaborate to decide on the method and criteria they will use to solve the problem. The students, or cognitive coach, either one, will discuss a schedule for individual research and collaborative meetings. Depending on the educational setting, this may be set by the coach or decided on by the students. Also may be dependent upon student age and experience. Then, the students engage in independent study across content areas, building on previous knowledge. Which aspects of the problem each student investigates will have been determined by the student's approach to solving the problem. The students will reconvene to share information and to engage in peer teaching, collaboration, and constructive criticism. These are skills the coach can model for students. The students work toward a solution and may repeat independent study and return to this step, maybe even a few times. Then, the students come to a consensus, present their solution in an appropriate real-world manner, and review what they have learned. The product students have as a result of their problem-based learning experience may or may not be a traditional project. Finally, the students engage in self-reflection, peer review, and coach review of the problem-solving process. As I mentioned earlier, choosing a real-world, ill-structured problem is the basis for a successful problem-based learning experience for you and your students. I have pulled two scenarios from the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy's Problem-Based Learning Network to illustrate problems that can be chosen for our youngest elementary students and our oldest secondary students. These examples also illustrate the variety of subjects that are incorporated into solving one problem. In the first example, a kindergarten teacher coaches students to notice that invasive insects are eating the leaves off plants in the school's garden. She asks them to investigate and determine appropriate actions to rejuvenate the garden so that all plants are healthy and beneficial insects thrive. Students will need to study things about simple food chains, plant structures, and life cycles, as well as other topics, to solve this problem. In the second example, the Art League has asked 12th grade fine art students to design a logo and a brand for the upcoming community art show. In this scenario, the students will need to incorporate the principles of good design with the basics of marketing strategies as they consider the medium and costs of the promotion. During the last slide, I shared two problem-based learning scenarios with you from the Problem-Based Learning Network's website for collaborative inquiry and action. On this webpage, you will find a number of problem-based learning scenarios that can be used with learners of all ages, from primary through adult learners. Let's talk a little bit now about standards and assessments. Problem-based learning is a constructivist approach to learning. Given the components and process of problem-based learning, the standards, indicators, and benchmarks chosen to connect with a problem-based learning experience will focus on critical thinking and problem solving. On this slide, you will see three standards which directly correlate to problem-based learning scenarios. I'll give you an example from the first standard on the slide of an indicator and two supporting benchmarks that a teacher could choose when implementing this kind of learning. For AASL Standard 1, which is Inquire, Think Critically, and Gain Knowledge, a problem-based learning scenario would support Indicator 1.1.3, which is Develop and refine a range of questions to frame the search for new understanding. Two benchmarks that could be used to define the success of meeting this indicator would be to 1. Explore problems or questions for which there are multiple answers or no best answer, and 2. Review the initial information needed to clarify, revise, or refine the questions. These are just examples. There are many standards that you could apply. Choosing assessment tools for problem-based learning experiences is a matter of keeping authentic assessment in mind. The types of tools best suited to offering realistic assessment that demonstrate student mastery of the problem-solving process, as well as their use of knowledge in multiple ways across a variety of subjects, include things like self-reflection logs, peer reflection, debriefing, task completion reports, and other methods of process assessment, as well as portfolio and presentation assessment rubrics, checklists, and organizers. As with all learning, it is important to offer opportunities for timely and effective constructive feedback throughout the entire problem-based learning process. While the coach will model ways in which to give feedback, the emphasis throughout a problem-based learning scenario should be on self and peer assessment to build further knowledge and understanding. Like any other method, it is important to look critically at the limitations of problem-based learning. The biggest concerns with problem-based learning center around the resources necessary to plan and implement cross-curricular learning experiences that do not produce traditional assessment results. Another concern that educators often initially have is the loss of control they could feel when they step out of the instructor role and into the role of coach, mentor, or facilitator. If you can't find a collaborative partner or just aren't ready yet to fully implement problem-based learning, think about ways you can include real-world problem-solving scenarios in your current lessons and units. We've covered a number of components, ideas, and elements that will help you successfully implement and assess problem-based learning in your learning environment. Let's review a few top tips from what we've talked about. First, present a well-designed, ill-structured problem. Next, schedule, or encourage students to schedule, their independent research time, as well as their collaborative time. Plan frequent opportunities for self-assessment, peer feedback, and coach review. As the coach, be prepared to model inquiry and critical thinking skills to your students as they navigate the problem-solving process. And ensure relevance by choosing a real-world problem and a real-world presentation format for their solution. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 10 or 15 minutes, but there's still so much more to learn. I've included a number of additional resources on the next slide for you to explore. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.